What's going on, everyone? It feels a little bit interesting doing this solo, but um, thank you to those who will be viewing. Let me take this off. And welcome. Thank you, Nick, for coming in last minute.
Absolutely.
But yeah, welcome to Redemption Stories for those of you who are live and those of you who will catch it later on. My name is Elena Tang, and my co host Marlon Johnson is jet setting, I don't know where, investing in himself and learning new things. So, uh, Nick is a good friend of mine from our sub 2 real estate mentorship community. And there were some scheduling conflicts this week, and I apologize for kind of posting on my Instagram of another interview that we're gonna be doing. But Nick graciously agreed to be interviewed, so thank you, Nick, for
Absolutely.
always coming through. But yeah, it's let's see, I'm always like, especially because I know you, I'm like, where do I start? Right. Um, and so I guess there's so many places where we can start. So I
There's a
apologize.
lot.
Yeah. Um, I guess I can kind of do like a brief background
Yeah.
of how we know each other, and then feel free to fill in the spaces and stuff, and
Yeah.
maybe just kind of ad lib to how you wanted to share. But um, so Nick and I are part of Sub Two, the real estate community, and how we met was, I remember doing the I do mindset Zooms every week for our community, and you would come on a couple times. I remember the first time that you came on, I believe you had shared that you were just in a challenging and kind of a dark place. You had a friend that had recently just passed away. Is that what happened?
One of
Uh,
the first ones. Yeah.
one of the first ones, right?
That's
Right.
when I was in Denver, and my friend had
That's
just
right.
died. Yeah.
Right. Right. And um, and just I just remember there was a lot of still. I mean, and this is why, like, I really connect with you, because even in the midst of despair and sorrow and sadness, like, I felt like there was this person inside of you that was like, I'm still meant for more. And you were fearful of becoming a statistic, right? So just, I mean, kind of briefly, and I don't want to share your story. I think I want you to share it. But you had shared about your struggles in the past with addictions
Mhm.
and drugs and whatnot, and you were fearful of becoming a statistic. Just kind of falling into the same um, things that you've seen. I mean, especially for someone that has gone through the struggles that you've gone through, you've seen a lot of death in your
Very
life,
much.
right? So,
I
yeah.
when I first got into recovery, like people used to always say stuff like, "If you don't have a suit, you better get one,"
Oh, wow.
because the reality of the disease of addiction is like so many people don't make it out.
Yeah.
Like I've lost count of how many people in just my short life of funerals and heroin overdoses and
Yeah.
suicides and drunk driving. I mean, you name it. Like the
Right.
list just goes on and on and on and on and on and on.
Right.
You know.
Yeah. And so, I mean, if you can kind of take me back, or take us back, obviously there's those in the audience that might not know your story. Um, and this is going to be, I know it's going to be a beginning to what you're going to be doing in the future as well. So I'm excited that I get to kind of write in the history books that I interviewed you, and and then your trajectory. I still really believe that you have a lot more in you. So if you can just take us back to just your journey of the traumas and the pains, because that's where I believe you've drawn a lot of your own the superpowers.
Yeah.
right, that have been revealed to you, and that you're kind of leaning a little bit more into that. But take us, if you can just take us back to your childhood and just what you experienced that kind of led you towards that maybe darker path in the beginning.
So I started using drugs at a very early age. I started in middle school dabbling with this and that, and by the time I was in freshman in high school, I was heroin addict. I had full blown crack addiction, and so I briefly put it down for a minute and I was just selling drugs. Like I wasn't really. I kind of got away from the harder stuff, and I was just dealing. And then when my dad was killed on my 17th birthday. Right. And that's where it all just kind of spiraled out of control. Like I just didn't give I didn't. Is it okay if I cuss?
Yeah. I mean,
I just didn't give a fuck anymore.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like when my dad died, it was like I was already drinking really heavily, and I started taking more prescription pharmaceuticals like Xanax, and I just had so much pain from I was a kid with like this grown man problem, like like to lose my father was like my biggest supporter. Me and my mother have never really got along to this day. We still don't see eye to eye. And so when my dad was ripped away, it was like I just didn't give a fuck about anything or anyone, right? And I just plummeted straight to the bottom. And that's when I started shooting heroin at 17 years old.
Wow.
And from that, for the next year, like 2 years, I was completely strung out. I had I got a settlement from my dad dying. So I had this nasty heroin habit, and I ended up in prison at 19 years old.
Wow.
And so at 19, when I went to prison, I went to treatment and in and out of inpatient rehabs. But when I went to prison and I sat down for like a year, and I had the opportunity to really like put more than just a few days clean together. Like by the time I got out, I had just shy of a year clean, and like I started going to 12-step meetings, and I started to develop a relationship with God, and just being of service to other people and helping other addicts. And like that's where I really like found my passion. Like I found a reason to live again. Right. And I was gifted with this talent of being able to reach people.
Yeah.
Like I was able to reach people in ways that, I've helped thousands of people over the years, come out of, just the bottom, like in treatment centers, jails, institutions, prisons, like people with just rough and rugged stories where like nobody believes in them.
Right.
Like their families abandon them. Everybody abandons them. But like when you have one person, despite all the bullshit, who will like walk you hand in hand.
Yeah.
And just believe in you wholeheartedly and faithfully, like that makes a huge difference in somebody's life.
Right.
And so I stayed clean for 6.5 years, from 19 until the age of 25. I spoke in treatment centers locally where I live every week, once, sometimes twice a week. I sponsored addicts in prison throughout the country. And, I remember I was like 22 years old, and I was on this service committee where we would sponsor addicts by mail and work the 12 steps with them. And I got a letter from an inmate in San Quentin who had been there for about 15 years. And in
death row.
In the 90s, he killed 2 people.
Wow.
And so he was looking for somebody to like guide him through the steps, right?
Wow.
For 15 years before I got this letter. And when I got it and I opened it, he's like, I don't know if anybody's actually going to get this. I've been trying this for years, but I am desperately looking for somebody who would work the 12 steps with me.
Wow.
And so what it showed me was like, this person who was never going to see the other side of the gate.
Yeah.
He's going to be in prison the rest of his life. Like he was never going to go home. But he still wanted to like experience some sort of freedom from himself.
Yeah.
freedom from the past, freedom from the decisions that he made, freedom from all of the hurt and trauma and pain and all the things that he had been through in his life. Like he just put his life in the hands of a stranger,
right,
on a piece of mail and sent him to the other side of the country.
Yeah.
And like I used to speak at big events where there would be thousands of people, like thousands of people. And people would call me from all over the place, in Chicago and Philly and Florida and here and there. And they would pay for me to fly out there to speak at their conventions.
Wow.
And when I had 6.5 years clean, I was 25 years old, and I had like built a life. Like it doesn't sound like much, but I was making like six figures. I was I was at a union bricklayer, and I was picking up side jobs. I was making six figures a year at like 22 years old. I had bought my first house at 23. I had this nice boat and all these things, and acquired, like, I built a life that like I enjoyed.
Yeah.
And for somebody who'd come out of prison, heroin addiction, like didn't think he was going to live, hated himself, hated God, hated everything and everyone, like to acquire those things and like be okay with yourself.
Yeah.
That's a massive accomplishment for somebody like in my position.
Yeah.
But I got complacent. And I got complacent in the idea that like I had acquired these things and lived this clean lifestyle for so long that like maybe, I had this bright idea, and my best thinking gets me into trouble. And I had this bright idea that because I had lived a life in recovery for X amount of years and done this, and that, and put my life together and paid my mortgage on time and did this, and that, blah, 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 blah. Like I thought, maybe that heroin addiction was just a phase. Thought it was just a phase, right?
Yeah.
And then maybe I could go to the bar and have one or two. And it wouldn't hurt nobody.
Right.
And so at 6.5 years clean, I made a decision that I could try to drink again. And it was a slow, subtle thing that was a downward spiral. But like when I first took a drink after that long, I didn't have immediate results, right? Like I didn't start losing everything that first day. And so I thought, well, shit, that wasn't so bad. And I did it again. And then I did it again and again and again. But I was still like, I'd left the union and started a business doing brickwork, and it did really well in the first year. I think we did $300,000, and for somebody who was 25 years old, my first year in business, that was phenomenal for me.
Right.
And I was like traveling the world and going to Hawaii and Colorado and Oregon and Washington and snowboarding all over the place, and like just living this free lifestyle of go and do whatever I please when I want, But eventually what happened is I was working around the clock, like 6 a.m. until 10, 11 o'clock at night.
Yeah.
And I'd sit in the bar and do estimates and emails and blah, 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 blah. And, one night people were passing around some Coke, and I thought it'd be a good idea to stay up and continue my work. From that first one, I completely destroyed my life. And within about 2 months, I had about a $4,000 a week crack cocaine habit. It's all I did, and I would work and get high and go to the bar and work and get high and go to the bar. And it was just like this repetitive, ugly, nasty cycle that like I couldn't stop. Yeah. I couldn't. And I would go and go for a week, 2 weeks at a time before I'd finally like be so physically drained that I would like, I just couldn't stay away.
Right.
you know? And eventually, you know, when you've got that type of habit and you're always asking people, like I still had work. People were still calling me to go do jobs on their house. But what happened is I started fucking up people's houses. I started running off with people's money. I started doing all kinds of shady shit.
Yeah.
My house went into I stopped paying all my bills. My house went into pre-foreclosure, you know, and then the COVID shit happened and like I didn't have to pay. I went into the forbearance thing and like, you know, I didn't pay my mortgage for God knows how long and wrecked a brand new truck and it was repossessed and just complete, like within a matter of no time, just everything that I had worked so hard for those 6.5 years, just completely destroyed it. And I didn't, you know, and then I started picking up new cases, new felonies, you know, going in and out of jails. And the worst part about it was in the back of my mind, I knew that there was a better way.
A better way towards what though?
That I didn't have to keep doing this to myself.
Yeah.
I didn't have to. Like I knew that if I really wanted to stop and stay clean, like I could go back to the meetings,
right,
and I could stay clean because I did it for years.
Right.
I was.
You had done it before. You had the proof of concept.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, I knew it was possible.
Yeah.
But I got to the point where I destroyed my life so bad that I didn't think it was repairable. I didn't. I really didn't. You know, like I had submerged myself in about $100,000 worth of bad debt. I'm gonna lose my house, you know, and like I just abandoned my children, and everything just seems so far from repair.
Yeah.
That I didn't want to try anymore.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I just continued in the downward cycle to where I became suicidal. You know, and psychosis and suicide is like it's a nasty mix, boy.
Right. Right.
It's a nasty mix where you're up for 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 days in a row and you're not sleeping and all you can, you know, and you go through this cycle of drink and get high, drink and get high. So you're up and you're down, you're up and you're down, you're up and you're down. And the whole time, you know, I remember the first time I tried to commit suicide, my mother had this like, you know, that motherly instinct is what I call it. And she knew something was wrong. And she was the only one with a key to my house at the time. And she showed up to my house to do a wellness check with the paramedics.
Wow.
Let them into my house and found me with a knife hanging out of the back of my head.
Oh, wow.
Because I had stood in front of the mirror after like a 9-day binge, like taking Xanax and drinking whiskey and smoking crack. And I had there was drugs everywhere when the paramedics and police came to my house. And I stood in front of the mirror and just looked myself face to face and said, "Look what you've done to your life, you worthless piece of fuck. What did you do? You can't fix any of this. You've abandoned your son. You've left everything. You destroyed all your relationships with everyone. What is the point of continuing anymore? You worthless fuck." And just boom.
Wow.
And jammed a knife right in the back of my head.
Wow.
And I woke up face down, and the paramedics pulled a knife out of the back of my head.
Yeah.
And I refused treatment. I wouldn't go to the hospital.
Wow.
I wouldn't go. And I just kept on getting high.
Wow.
You know?
So there's a couple of different things, though, right? Because I think that, and we've talked about this a little bit. I think you had mentioned that you started in middle school, right? Just like exploring. And what was going on in your childhood upbringing? Again, it's not to necessarily, I'm not trying to blame your mother. I'm not trying to blame your father, because I think what I've come to realize is that our parents and the previous generations before that, they only knew what they knew,
Mm-hmm.
and they didn't know what they didn't know.
Right.
And so I've really let go of this idea of like, oh, people should be blamed, right? And I've come to understand that I think it's important to acknowledge what we experienced, but not look at it from a way of blaming. And it's like, okay, so this is what we've learned, and it happened for us, and it created this power, right? But what was going on in your family that at the early age of middle school that you thought, oh, I would like to explore using drugs? Like, why that path?
So it was kind of, it was really the people and crowd that I was hanging around. You know, like I skateboarded through middle school, so I was hanging out with people that would skateboard and they'd smoke weed and do a little of this and do a little of that, and like I just, like I just wanted to fit in. I just wanted to do what these people were doing.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I really do believe that this is something that I've come to conclusion about a long time ago. Is I believe that I had this disease of addiction long before I ever picked up drugs. Before I ever even touched it, because it was always like that lost, insecure, just want to fit in.
Yeah.
Like don't feel good enough about myself.
Right.
Feel less than, like, and that started at such a young age. I remember in grade school is so fuzzy. Like for me, it's just not there. I don't have like those, and I don't know if it's like a mental,
right. Like you coped by just blocking it out. You forgot about it. Yeah.
Yeah. And my early childhood, it's just, I don't know.
Can you talk a little bit, if you're comfortable with it, even just, you had alluded to a little bit of your relationship with your mom too, and how it's not, I mean, I think that there's more than just you didn't see eye to eye. Like it sounds like there was even something there too. Like what was it like in your home?
So my sister and my mother, me and my sister were never treated the same. And I don't like to blame her, right? Because like you said, she is who she is. Yeah. And like, I've learned this to practice empathy in all of this, right?
Yeah.
Because my mother's mother was an alcoholic.
Right.
Slept around, abandoned her kids, treated them like shit, left my mother to take care of her 5 siblings because she was the oldest.
Wow.
From like 7 years old.
Wow.
Like 7 years old, taking care of 5, 3, 2, 1, taking care of little kids.
Wow.
While her dad was working. And so I was her firstborn, and I just don't know. And I found out just recently that my mother found out she was pregnant with me when she was arrested for a DWI.
Wow.
So I don't know if it was just, if I was treated differently because she had that little girl who was taking care of all those kids. You understand what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And so like the inner child in her,
right, wanted to rescue. Yeah.
Was angry and resentful that here she is taking care of another kid at first.
Right.
Because by the time my sister was born, she had kind of adapted to the fact that she was going to be a mother, right?
Right.
And I don't. Like you said, she only knows what she knows.
Yeah.
And I don't blame her for my decisions whatsoever.
Right.
I've come to learn empathy and humility for the situation.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And you know, even today, like she's so ignorant. Like she starts drinking and she just gets fucking nasty to the point where I block her for months at a time. Like I can't associate with her.
Right.
Because I'm not going to allow that in my life anymore. Like I know what I've done.
Right.
And I'm making every single necessary, taking every single necessary action to clean up my life.
Yeah.
And I've done really well.
Yeah.
I have.
Yeah.
As much as I like to beat myself up and wish I was where I want to be and this, that, and the, like, I've done really well.
You have.
I've done really well.
You have.
And it's a miracle that I'm even alive. You know?
Yeah. Yeah. I remember when we were talking, when you were going through kind of a darker phase and whatnot, but I was like, man, you got like 9 lives, you know? And I remember telling you that your story isn't done.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just beginning.
Yeah.
And I think something to kind of share for people that will be watching this too is there's a couple things, right? So it's like the forgiveness that we can offer, you know, our parents and the people that maybe disappointed us or failed us, right? And it's not to blame them, but number one, it's to forgive them, right? And then number two, it's to be able to love them from afar. I think that's the other thing too, is like I struggled with kind of feeling a sense of like disappointment with my parents. And my brother used to always say like, why do you want to change them so badly? And he would tell me like, you just need to let it go. And I couldn't, right? And like, I thought that I had the power to change my parents and not have them trigger me. But it's like, and I love my parents and I'm close with them, but at the same time, like I think that I've finally kind of like let go and not feel as triggered as much of like, I can't change them.
Right.
And like you said, it's even further, even deeper than, okay, well, I'm going to forgive them. It's, I show empathy towards them too.
Right.
And I think that's where there's deeper power in that as well. Right. And going back to what you were saying earlier of that person in San Quentin, it's like sometimes a complete stranger can offer us the love and the empathy and compassion that we've yearned for our entire lives from our family.
Yeah.
Right. And I think that's why your journey, I believe, is powerful right now. And it's powerful as you continue just to grow into your purpose, right? Like we've talked about. So how long have you been sober now?
I'm coming up on 2 years again.
Amazing. Yeah, and it's a new chapter, right?
Yeah.
Like, and earlier you had said that, you know, 6 years sober and then you ruined your life, but it's like you had a huge bump in the road. But I think what's beautiful about your story is that you're leaning into your superpower more of just having that empathy for people.
Right.
And I think what's really interesting is that it's like empathy is an incredibly powerful thing, and yet it's one of the most lacking things.
Right.
Right. And so, yeah. And I think that we had a pretty powerful moment, where I remember, and I just wanted to like give a shout out to LT because she was the one that told me to call you that week, that day. But you were going through a struggle again, right? Of like just feeling really down and having suicidal thoughts again. And you hopped on to the Daily Dial on Tuesday with Keston, and you were sharing just how you're feeling, just wanting to. I think that a lot of the times, like the thing with suicide, where people may not be able to understand, is that it's like a level of hopelessness that people experience, to where it's like they don't want to feel that level of misery and hopelessness anymore, right? And so you were feeling that again.
Yeah.
A little bit, right? I mean, I don't want to say a little bit, but you're feeling it a lot. And
absolutely.
And it's powerful, because I remember LT, like I woke up that morning and LT texted me, she's like, call Nick. And what's crazy is that she hadn't been on the Daily Dial in a while. Mm-hmm. And she felt a prompting from God to hop on. And it was like, she's looking at her clock, she's like, it's like almost over. Why would I go on? But she just felt this like pressing, right? This kind of conviction almost. So she hops on, and you were sharing. And she was like, oh, right. And then she knew that you had come onto my Mindset Zooms, and just you going through what you were going through. And for me, it's like, I think I was trying to lend to you what I saw, right? And I told you, like, I don't make stuff up. Like, I don't make stuff up. I don't draw stuff out of nowhere. And the thing that I've always seen in you is you have a light, but it's like sometimes we are our own worst enemy, and it's like we want to cover that light. Mm-hmm. Like, no, I don't believe it.
Right.
And like I don't know you that long, and it's still like, Nick, don't put out that light, don't put out that fire. And you're like, what fire? Like the fire that you have in you, right? Like, you could have died so many times, literally, like just with, the level of drug use that you did use, and you trying to take your own life. And it's like, God spared you.
Oh yeah.
So are you beginning to feel a little bit more like this is like your superpower is what you're meant to do in terms of like the sober living? And
so where I've been between then and now, I've been talking about it a lot with different people, like my partner Christina, and the real estate space is in the beginning, it's such a brutal industry.
Yeah.
It is not for the faint of heart.
Right.
Like to really just get in and grind it out and figure it out and stumble, and it takes time, and not everybody figures it out in their first 30, 60, 90 days. Like there are people who go months and months, sometimes a year without closing their first deal. And it's like, I got into the real estate space because of one reason. I was contracting, and for years I was, contracting and doing brickwork for all of these investors, all these investors. And that was like my main clientele was investors. Yeah. And I'm like, why am I doing all this shit for all these people, man?
Right.
Like knowing that, I just knew the potential that I had. Yeah. And so like coming out of, my run, I accumulated a lot of debt. That it would take me forever to get that wiped out. And I knew that getting into the real estate space would be the only way that I could do it, and in a timely manner.
Yeah.
That's why I got into it.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it's, it's difficult because I'm like, I need to keep up with all my stuff, but yet I'm trying to build out an acquisitions business. But while I'm waiting on closings and hiccups and this and that, like people are calling me to come do brickwork. And it's like, I've really kind of come to acceptance that like it's going to take time.
Yeah.
Just give time.
Yeah.
And I
Yeah.
don't have to pay back every single debt that I owe right away. I don't have to pay it back this month. I don't have to pay it back next month.
Right.
It could take me another 6 months. Shit, it could take me another year.
Yeah.
But what I've really started to figure out, and I was listening to the Time to Thrive challenge, and I heard Tony Robbins talking about the way that you will. Don't I'm going to misquote this, but
It's okay.
I'm going to give it to you the way that I heard it.
Yeah.
The more you work on yourself, like me as a person, like my daily physical, mental, spiritual, emotional habits, the more that I train myself to be better in all of those areas, it naturally just seems to kind of, and that light that you call it, will spread its tentacles into every area of my life.
Right.
But if I'm so hung up on, I'm never going to get this paid off.
Right.
I might as well just give up. I might as well quit. I might as well stop trying. This deal didn't work out. That deal didn't work out. Blah, blah, blah. And you just go into that self-pity bullshit that's what your whole life will be consumed around.
Right.
Like my whole life was being consumed with self-pity, remorse, resentment, hate, and all these things. And it's like all of a sudden, like just in the last few weeks, I'd say maybe more than a few weeks, probably like the last month, I've really started to buckle down and look at like my personal development and start to create some habits, like wake up early, like pray and be quiet in the morning. Just focus and be quiet with myself first thing in the morning.
Right.
And it kind of sets the tone for the rest of the day.
Right.
Versus like you get up late and you rush out the door to do whatever the hell it is you got to do. And then you start your day like that. The rest of it just sets the pace for the rest of the day.
Right.
Then you're fumbling around and scrambling and
Yeah.
So,
and there's intentionality behind that though. I think that it's like, I feel like this is like the word of, the year for me is it's intentionality. And we can't grow unless we're intentional.
Yeah.
It's like planting a seed and then not watering it and then thinking it'll grow. You're not giving it sustenance. You're not giving it what it needs. And I remember I was talking to you a few weeks ago and you were feeling down, but it wasn't like, you were giving up. You were just like struggling. And there was like, a couple deals didn't go through. And I love that you're sharing this now, because I remember in the moment, I was like, what's going on though? And you're like, I want it done faster. And then you said yourself, I didn't even say it, you're like, I just need to calm the F down, And I was like, and that's why I laughed earlier, because you had said that it doesn't come fast. And I'm like, hey, look at you, like you're believing in the process, right? And I made a Instagram, I kind of retagged one of Alex Hormozzi's Instagram posts about like, you can't lose if you don't give up. And I kind of retagged, I reshared that post, and I said entrepreneurship is a faith journey. And it's a faith journey believing that you can do it and that you're never going to give up. And it's a faith journey that God's with you in the process. And it's not, and when I say that process about like God being with you, it's not like, oh, God's going to give you all the financial wealth and riches overnight or whatever, it's like not even about that. But I love that you are realizing that more, that it's not overnight and that there's a process to it. And I love hearing that, like, you're believing more in yourself. because that's the intentionality of us. Like if no one else is going to believe in us,
Right.
like, right, if even if we don't believe in ourselves,
Who's gonna?
exactly.
Mm-hmm.
And so I'm proud of you for believing in it, believing, even God's words, my words, people that speak blessings into your life, right? Sometimes people speak blessings and it's like we reject it. Like, no, that's not us, right? And that's not, honestly, that's not even real, true humility, right? And another thing, I shared this, I can't remember, the other day, or maybe even last week on the podcast, but another time that we spoke, you had shared of, feeling like you're, struggling, right? Just entrepreneurship is challenging, right? Like we talked about. And it's going to be ups and downs, ups and downs. And I remember you were things with the deals weren't going through and as you wanted to. And then one of your friends had landed in the hospital.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember you said there was a shift for you, right? And like you made a choice. There was a fork in the road decision for you. It's like, do I choose to pity my situation and my circumstance and blame the world and blame X, Y, and Z for not happening? Or, you were presented with, hey, my friend needs me right now. And you chose to focus on serving and being there for your friend.
Absolutely.
And it's like, that actually put life into perspective. Is when you stepped outside of your circumstance to serve someone else. And like, that was like a powerful and beautiful story that you shared, because knowing, kind of like your past and where you've come from, you could have chosen different paths. Right. And so I kind of go back to, I love hearing you lean into more of like, you've shared that your purpose is you want to open up sober living facilities and be the avenue where you're believing that people can overcome these things, their addictions, right? Yeah, I think from that, like, it was really, really powerful when you shared that.
It's a proof of concept that I've practiced for a long time.
The
more you give, the more you get.
Yeah.
The more you give, the more you get.
Yeah.
And for me, like, my friend that was in the hospital,
yeah,
he's been somebody I've known for a very long time.
Yeah.
I've known him for probably 10 years, Like, I first came into recovery, I was 19 years old. And so I've known him the entire time that I've been around the recovery, community. And here he is, right? Somebody who has poured so much life into so many people. And so when the tables have turned, right? And here he is. I'm not sure how long he's gonna.
Yeah.
Like, I know this.
Can you share too, like, the situation that your friend's in? Sorry, I'm here. Yeah.
So he's got cancer.
Right.
Right. And he's been fighting it off and on for some time. And he's just not doing so good, right?
Yeah.
I mean, I've watched this before. And it's a painful topic for me, right? Because I'm going to tell you about my friend Tom. Tom taught me so much about life. He was the most loving, caring, compassionate, empathetic person, just full of humility, like, you know, an amazing individual.
Yeah.
Who would just give and give and give and give and give and spend all of his time with anyone, anywhere, if he could help them stay clean just one more day.
Yeah.
And Tom got sick with cancer.
Mm.
And me and Tom had this relationship where, like, my father was killed when I was 17 years old, and Tom lost his son to addiction when his son was 19 years old. And I got clean at 19.
That's right.
And so from the moment I met him and we started to just learn a little bit about each other, and those two facts of, you know, came across the table, and we just kind of like naturally filled that role for each other. You know, and I looked at him like a father figure.
Right.
And he looked at me like the son that he had lost.
Yeah.
And so when he died, he got sick with cancer and was like back and forth. He was gonna make it, then he wasn't gonna make it. Then he was in remission, and then he wasn't in remission. And you know, and when he died, I was using. I was using, and I remember I went to the hospital. Like when I knew Tom, I knew he was gonna die. I knew he was gonna die. And I went up there to say my last goodbye to him, right? And you know, I went in there, and I felt so selfish for coming in and just pouring out, you know, like coming to him when he's getting ready to die and sharing my pain with him, right? I felt so bad about that. And I told him that I was strung out smoking crack at the time. And he looked at me, he said, "Nick, there's only one person who's sicker in this world right now than me. And do you know who that person is?"
Yeah.
He said, "It's you. I hope and pray that you find what it is that you are looking for in that crack pipe."
Wow.
And that was the last time I saw him.
Wow.
And so to revisit, like to go and be in I don't like hospitals. I don't do hospitals. I don't like, I just, no.
Yeah. Yeah.
And to go to the hospital with somebody with the very same circumstances, right? Like cancer can be a very painful thing to watch.
Yeah.
You watch this person that's full of life, and then all of a sudden they've lost a bunch of weight.
I'll do it. Fine.
And they don't look like the same person that they once were.
Right.
And to go into the hospital and just sit and be and talk and just try to shed some fucking light in his day.
Yeah. Yeah.
And put all of my past experiences and put all of my hurt and all that to the side and just be there in the spirit of compassion and kindness and empathy and humility and, you know, and give myself an opportunity to grow through that.
Yeah.
Give myself the opportunity to grow through it.
Yeah.
You know?
And I think the powerful thing is too, is like, I just want to ensure that people understand. It's like, I'm not trying to tell people that they should ignore what they're going through. But I do think that there is growth and there are opportunities that we might be missing if we feel like there's someone else in need and then we get stuck in our own circumstances. Yeah, I just when you shared that, I thought, wow, like Nick truly is growing into the person that he was meant to be. Right. And you're doing both. Like you said earlier, you're intentionally focusing on healing and growing and setting different habits too. That's the other thing, is that the way that we know that we're truly growing is by our actions, not just by our thoughts, but it's our thoughts and our actions.
Right.
You're moving differently. Right. You feel different in the sense that it's not just like, oh, you know, this is going to be a momentary thing. right? Like, of course you're going to go through bumps in the road, right? Like, that's just life. But I feel like you're, again, like I said earlier, like you're leaning more into this idea of like, even what we talked about right after I interviewed Pace, and he shared about his brother. And we spoke that morning, and you're, you know, like Pace's brother took his life, and his brother was also around, you know, people that had addictions and whatnot. Yep. And I remember specifically we talked after that interview the next day, and you had said, maybe I don't have to accept the labels that were put on me. And I was like, I thought that was incredibly powerful, because sometimes those labels that we think, like, we all, like, I think society, we operate a little bit in that, right? It's like putting everything into boxes. And we were talking about this, like diagnoses, and it's like, oh, well, you have an addiction. Oh, you have this X, Y, and Z mental health, you know, disorder, according to the DSM-5, whatever. And it's like, okay, right? And coming from my background as a licensed clinical social worker, it's like, there is some reasoning behind that. However, what I'm realizing even more is, it's like, how does that serve you? And really, what are we going to do, right? As being in the position of like, okay, so these labels are sort of being put on us, right? It's like, well, but we could break labels too.
Right.
And I think earlier you had also said too, though, is like, you have to be aware of your struggles and weaknesses as well. Sure. Right? Like when we were in Vegas for the conference, you're like, the bar and the club is not my scene. Mm-hmm. Right? It's like, you've come to realize and to recognize, like, hey, I tested the waters.
Yeah.
Right.
We're not testing them again.
Right. And but that's really important. There was a lot of people, and this could be anything, right? And I think that I want to be very careful that, like, you know, drugs and alcohol is not the epitome of sins.
Right.
And that's the dangerous thing, is that a lot of people, like, we in our society, we're like, oh, we create this hierarchy of like, oh, well, this is way worse than this. And I'm like, nah, like, you're letting yourself off the hook for thinking that other people's sins are worse than yours, but we all have our own battles and our journeys. And I think that for you, it's like, you've recognized, like, okay, this is my Achilles heel. And so you're putting parameters around that to you know thyself, you know the struggles. And so what I love is that you know the struggles, and then you know that you're strengthening yourself more and more as well. Right? Because I think with addictions, it's like, it can be a lifelong battle, but the degree of, and the challenge of it doesn't have to be always like that heavy of a burden, right? No. But you're doing the things in order to strengthen yourself to where it doesn't feel like a heavy burden all the time. And you're thriving because of that. Right? And we were talking about this before too, but it's like, and I'm not, and please understand, like, I'm not trying to take the credit, but, you know, after we spoke, like, you were having suicidal thoughts, wanting to use again. And, you know, we talked, and then I slowly, it's like every day you were texting me devotionals that you were reading, you were going to meetings, you had committed to yourself. I didn't even tell you, but you were promising yourself you were going to go to meetings every day, right? You were going to, do the things that your AA meetings tell you to do, right? To read and journal. And you were texting me every day, and it's like, you were still doing those things, even though you might not have felt like you were completely out of the woods, but you were doing those things, right? And then, but now it's like, I just feel a sense of levity and a deeper belief that it's like, this is who you are, not the person that you felt like you were just broken and traumatized and, you know, all these things, but it's like, the thriving person that you're experiencing and living out now is like, that's who you were always meant to be. But you just got a little bit lost along the way.
Yeah, you know, I went through that up and down cycle. Like my first year and a half clean, I went through the up and down cycle a lot, you know, and this is what I come to, and this is why I really believe that the whole concept of what Tony Robbins was speaking of, like when I first got clean, all I cared about was business. I had this massive pile of bullshit to clean up, right? Like huge. My house was in foreclosure. I owed everybody and their mother, you know, like all these debts. And so when I got out of jail, that's all I wanted to do is just fit. I felt like if I fix everything on the outside, and just clean up all this stuff and get my house out of foreclosure and pay back this person, pay back that person, that if I do all of this outside stuff, then I'll be okay. So I chased that so like unbelievably. And you know, and what I figured out is that I could clean up all that stuff and still be fucking miserable.
Yeah.
And so this is where I'm really, it's starting to all click.
Yeah.
It's an inside job.
Yeah.
It's an inside job.
Yeah.
You know?
You have to be content.
100%.
And pleased with who you are first.
100%.
Yeah.
And all that stuff on the outside will naturally fix itself.
Yeah. Absolutely.
You continue to be of service and give more than you get, and continue to pray and just believe in your journey and believe in yourself and believe in when I believe in what God has in store for me.
Right.
And just be a humble servant of him and do his work.
Yeah.
Everything else will work out the way that it's supposed to, man.
Yeah.
Not
Amen.
Nick's way.
Seriously. Yeah.
Not Nick's way.
Yeah.
Because what I've learned is Nick's way is terrible. My way is fucking terrible. Like
it's good that we can laugh about it, right? Like,
man,
yeah.
Left to my own devices,
right?
That's a bad sight. That's a bad place to be.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
And so
no, go ahead. Sorry.
So I've got to do more and give more and just be, you know, and continue to live with that mindset.
Yeah.
You know, because what I started to realize is like when I was so caught up in business and work and wholesale and finding the deal, just, you know, working 7 a.m. till 9, 10 o'clock at night, and all I was worried about was business. And I'd go to the meeting and I'd sit there, and I wasn't in the meeting. I'd sit there and be messaging sellers and, you know, sending emails and this and that and contract this, that, blah, blah, blah. Like I just was so disoriented.
Right.
Because I wasn't taking care of the inside.
Yeah.
And I thought that, like, you know, it's so easily justifiable for entrepreneurs to like work from sun up till sundown 7 days a week, 365 days in a row, and like just get in that mindset that, like, you know, and it's easily justifiable.
Yeah.
Because I'm working on my business.
Right. Yeah. It almost seems like noble. Oh, he's a hard worker.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But that's bullshit.
Yeah.
You know, like people who are highly, highly, highly successful commit suicide too.
Exactly.
People who are worth hundreds of millions of dollars hate themselves too.
Yeah.
And so it's like it's that never ending battle of balance where you take one little piece of sand off this side and you're You're constantly trying to level out.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
And for me, I've started to just slow the fuck down.
Yeah.
Just slow down.
Yeah.
Smell the roses, motherfucker.
Yeah. One day at a time.
Yeah.
One rose at a time. One service at a time too. Right.
Yeah.
I have a question for you.
What you got?
I feel like what I hear from people that have pain and stories and struggles, I hear a lot from people that they're like, I just don't want to share my stuff, right? Like we're in a business mentorship essentially, right? We're in a real estate mentorship, and people are trying to do deals with one another, and there's money involved.
Oh yeah.
And there's lots of money involved, and I don't know, like, and people are like, I don't want to share my stuff because I don't want to be perceived a certain way.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't want people to think that I'm weak. I don't want people to think that I've got issues. I don't want, I might lose deals because of that. Like, what do you have? What would you say? Because, and the reason why I'm asking you is that I feel like you're the complete opposite.
You see me smiling
like,
so big?
Yeah, no, I know. That's why I love it, because like, and you stepped into like the first introductory of, of even just sharing your own story. You're like, this is me. Right. And you're like, hey, I had this addiction and my friend just died and I'm feeling, you were sad, and that's okay. But I guess there's two questions, right? So one question is, why do you where does that come from? Why do you feel this sense of of freedom to just share your story?
I've got two answers.
Yeah, bring it.
All right, first, when I ruined my business name, the brick restoration, Minden Masonry and Restoration, when I completely thrashed my name in my local community with all the investors and contractors and Facebook groups, everybody was like, watch out for that dope fiend motherfucker. He'll get you.
Wow.
And they were right. But when I got clean and I was starting to try to generate work again, right?
Yeah.
Because I never advertised for shit. All I did was post in Facebook groups. You know how people always go in these Facebook groups and try to sell their deals and shit?
Right.
That's how I generated all my brickwork.
Oh, wow.
So when I got clean and I started advertising through these groups again, everybody was like, watch out for that motherfucker. Right? And I set out on a mission and started to, here was my theory behind it, right? Like, I was so driven towards reestablishing my name and cleaning up my wreckage.
Right.
And I started being very, very open on social media and everywhere about who I am.
Wow.
And you know why? Because nobody can ever use it against me if I throw it all the way out in the open and air my own laundry.
Right. Yeah, there is no blackmail to be.
There is none.
On. Right.
You know what I mean?
Wow.
Like, yes, you're absolutely right. I smoked $3,000 worth of crack every single week, faithfully.
Right. Yeah.
And I survived, and I lived to tell about it, and I've got almost 2 years clean. You wanna clap for me there, motherfucker?
Right. Yeah, yeah.
People can use that
stigma. Tell me
stigma.
something I don't know. Yeah.
People can use that stigma against me all they want.
Right.
But will you share about the victories and successes that I've had since I put that down?
Right.
Will you talk about that?
Right.
And in my first year, and this is why I believe that I'm like destined to do some unbelievable things, right?
Absolutely.
Like when I have that mind, when I set my mind to something,
yeah,
against all odds,
yeah,
forget about it.
Yeah.
Like the guy who was known as a crackhead and would run off with your money, right? In the local construction community, investor community in St.
Right.
Louis,
Yeah.
the guy that everybody my first year clean, $476,000 in revenue.
Wow. That's powerful. Yeah.
And I told them all that I smoke crack, motherfucker.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know?
No,
So
it's
people would ask about it. People would be like,
Yeah.
listen, man, you know, people have been talking about you.
right.
We want to give you a shot.
Right.
We don't want to get burned.
Right.
And I'd tell them. I would tell
Right.
my customers flat out, like,
Yeah.
yes.
Yeah.
I went through a bump in the road, man.
Yeah.
But I've been clean for 6 months.
Yeah.
I've been clean for 9 months.
Yeah.
I've been clean, you know,
Yeah.
whatever the amount of time was.
Yeah.
Just shoot them straight.
Yeah. You know, I never told you this, but when I had helped to raise that money for you, and I got a text message the next day, and it was like, I think by that point, maybe there was, I want to say maybe we had reached 10,000 that we raised. I can't remember. Forgive me, I can't remember. But I got a text message from someone that's like, you know, you should maybe manage that money for him, and you know, kind of give it out a little bit slowly, and just, you know, don't let a former addict have that much money.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And I was just like, oh, like I understood where that person was coming from, but at the same time, I'm like, that is not how we're meant to move and operate in this life.
Right. And
I maybe because I just know you better. I ever since I met you, it was like, you're not that person that you struggled with in the past. And even when you were in the depths of despair, when you were, you know, feeling depressed and having suicidal thoughts, when I spoke with you that one time, it was still like, that still is that you were listening to the demons inside of you. Right. And listening to the lies. But it's like, I still know and knew that there were the real and true Nick was in there.
Right.
And so it's like, it made me sad. But what I love about who you are is you're honest with yourself. You're honest with everyone else. Right. And like, I trust you, brother. I trust you. Like, I'm like, I didn't flinch.
Right.
I was like, transfer responsibility over to Nick. Right. It's your money anyway. I didn't want to manage it for you. You're a grown adult.
Right.
Right. And you had already had a level of sobriety, and you shared things of what you were struggling with. I'm like, he's good.
Yeah.
And so I texted that person back. I said, you know, I understand where you're coming from, but that's not what I believe of who Nick is. And I trust and know that, like, you're never gonna cheat anymore.
Mm-hmm.
And you know, you had gone through a struggle and period of your life, but I'm a firm believer in just giving people second chances, right? I think that the world needs a little bit more of that.
Absolutely.
Because who in life and who in this world
Right.
is perfect?
Not one of us.
Right? And it's like, the people that don't give others second chances are the worst on themselves too. And so to me, when I hear people that are like kind of a little bit judgmental, I'm like, you need to forgive yourself.
Right.
You need to be compassionate towards yourself first, because the things that you're offering to other people, right? That judgment and that lack of empathy or compassion or whatever, it's like, you need to give that to yourself first.
Right.
Like you said earlier, right? With that we need to develop and heal. Otherwise, we're going to offer and try to help other people and think that that's going to somehow heal our own wounds and satisfy us. It's not.
Right.
So I think all that to say, I appreciate your honesty that you offer to yourself first and to everyone else. Like, I love that you don't have to hide.
I did that long enough.
Right. And you know how tiring it is. Right. So I'm proud of you for beginning to live more in who God created you to be. Yeah. Do you have any, like, it is actually 3 and I totally didn't realize, but do you have any like last, things that you want to share before we sign off? Yeah.
Just keep going, man.
Yeah.
Just keep going.
Yeah.
I'm super excited. I really am. I really am excited for what the next 3 to 6 months look like.
Yeah.
Because you when you're on the edge of just like breaking through and exploding.
Yeah.
Like you feel it. You know that you're so close.
Yeah.
And I'm just I'm being patient. I'm being obedient.
Yeah.
I'm being humble.
Yeah. You're calming the F down.
Yeah, that's it.
I love that you said that. Yeah. Well, Nick, I love you, brother. I'm proud of you.
Love you too. Truly.
Yeah. I think man, it's a privilege to be able to journey with you. And I can't wait to see you on bigger stages and for you to own bigger houses that you're going to be opening up as sober living facilities, and that you're going to be able to, and that's the beauty of of recovery, right? Of substance abuse recovery is the people that are in it and counseling people and talking to people, they come from that pain that they could share with other people. Right. And so, yeah, I love that that's the superpower that you're leaning into, that you want to share with those that were in your shoes or were in similar shoes before. So,
well, and the thing about it is, it's like what most people would look like the most devastating thing that's ever happened to me.
Yeah.
Like the absolute most devastating thing that could ever happen to a person.
Yeah.
I don't look at it like that. I wholeheartedly believe that it's the best thing that could have ever happened to me.
Wow.
Sitting back in a jail cell, bottomed out, and having been out of the system for years, and sitting in that, when I was like highly addicted to methamphetamine at the time, and I never slept, maybe once every week or 2.
Yeah.
And when I laid in that jail cell, and there was like 10 people in there, they're all huddled around, people on top of the bench, under the bench, on the side of the bench, people laying by the toilet.
Yeah.
And that was the best I had slept in so long. Interesting. Because I knew that I didn't have to fucking do it anymore.
Yeah.
I didn't have to do that anymore.
Yeah. You were done.
I slept at ease because the fight was over.
Did you recognize in that moment that was your rock bottom? And like,
knew it.
Wow.
100% knew it. 100% knew it.
Yeah.
And I would lay in the cell and like, you know, I hadn't slept so long that all I would do was sleep, you know? And so I'd sleep all day and I'd wake up in like terrors, you know, I'd wake up in terrors just thinking about everything that I had screwed up in my life and thinking about all of the things that I had to do to get back on track.
Right.
You know?
Yeah.
But that was the best thing that could have ever happened to me.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. It's this whole idea that I keep on hearing this phrase, it didn't happen to you, it happened for you.
Yeah.
You know?
Yep.
Well, continue to shine, brother. Yeah, I'm proud of you now, right? I don't want to say I'm proud of you for what you will be, because I'm proud of you now. Like, you've come a long way, and it really, truly, like I sense that levity, and it's just like it's slowly that burden that I heard in your voice, and just even in the way that you even looked, right, in Vegas too. Like, in hindsight, I was like, ooh, I wish I kind of, you know, kind of pressed a little bit into that, right? Of like, ooh, knowing now, but like there is, it truly is like you're living in more of your identity, and that burden doesn't feel like it's consuming you the way that it did before. So thank you for sharing your story.
Absolutely.
And you know that I'm always here for you. So let's continue to write your story in the chapters ahead, you know?
Yeah.
Have a wonderful weekend.
Absolutely.
You're heading out with your son this weekend?
Yeah, I'm about to go pick him up now.
Awesome. Have an amazing weekend. Thank you, brother.
Absolutely. Love you.
All right. Love you too, brother. Bye.
Bye-bye.